Hello, Brooke.
Hi, Noah.
Hi,
Hi.
everyone, and welcome back to Raising the New Earth podcast. Today, we are excited to converse with Coach B. He's the host of Dig Deep podcast, an awesome podcast. When you get a chance, please listen to it. He's a professional runner. What we love about him is that he combines spirituality through running. He's also an energy healer. He's a certified personal trainer and running coach. And together with his wife, Adriana, they created the Run Free Running Club, which is a group road and trail runs in Ventura County. So, welcome, Coach B, to our podcast.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'm super excited because I haven't been on a podcast before. So this is like, even though I have my own, it's still like surreal that I'm with like two other people. And you know what I mean? I'm very happy. So thank you.
Yeah, we are excited. The exchange of information and topic of conversation only expands when we have more people. So, thank you. So, tell us a little bit about your background and what made you choose fitness in general and running in particular.
So I've always been an athlete since I was a kid. I grew up playing soccer. I think I played every sport in the world, right? When you're a kid in the 90s, you kind of just play everything. And then at some point in my life, I got into like weightlifting, right? And it was just like try to get big, try to do all this stuff. And it was at some point it was something I wanted to pursue more often, you know what I mean? And then college years happen, I gained weight, of course, all this other stuff. And then running was my thing of try to lose weight for my wedding, you know, in a year. And then just also it got to the stage where I couldn't even like walk up a flight of stairs without like huffing and puffing. And I said, wow, this is not like a good thing to have, right? If you came and like walk up 10 stairs, you know what I mean, flight of stairs. And so I started running just to get cardio in. And so when I started to like connect to that, it became more surreal that running was like more than just like a hobby. I loved it to the point where like I would run every day. I would run to Blockbuster, which I don't know if a lot of viewers know what that is, but Blockbuster was like a little video store that I used to run to that was about a mile away from my house. And I started running there and then I started to get faster and faster. So I tested myself. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna run from here to here, from this time to this time. And then eventually it came to the stage where I was like, do you know what? Let me go push myself to do ultras. And then I just got kind of sucked into that. And when I was teaching myself how to run and all that wonderful stuff, I said, I should become a running coach because my last job was a merchandiser. So I was traveling a lot. I didn't have time to put running first. It was more like, this is my career right now. And then I'll put running and everything else on the back burner. And then it got to that point where I was like, do you know what? It's time for me to like quit my job. I had a mental breakdown, so I had to quit my job. And then I realized, you know what? Let me just go into the fitness world. And so I started taking classes on coaching and running. And then I started taking personal training stuff. And then I started taking more classes on running. And now here I am as a coach. I still work at the gym. So I do a little bit of private, a little bit of gym, and I do a lot of coaching online. So yeah, I mean, my whole background is all over the place. And then from there, I kind of went into spirituality, right? So I tried to combine spirituality with the running and kind of help mold people into utilizing their gifts. We all have special gifts. And it came to the point where I was like, do you know what? Like everyone always thinks it's like a physical aspect, you know, like in that sense, but there's more to that because the mental side comes to you, especially when you're like in these long endurance events. You realize that you need to rely on yourself and you can't be negative. You have to be more positive, right? And so my wife and I decided to combine everything, and then that's where Run Free Running Club came. You know, it went from just like a running group in Camarillo to like, let's turn this into a business and see what we can offer the world. And that's how everything kind of came together.
Wow.
I know it's a lot, right? It's a lot to swallow with
That-
a few minutes.
That's so beautiful that like I how you say you have all of this background, but I think that with all these guests that we interview, like the
Yeah.
one thing that I find so fascinating is beautiful is that we all come from these all different angles, and it's seeing all of those different perspectives and putting them together that like allow us to share
Yeah.
something super
I
special and unique.
yeah, because I think what we all go through a lot of trauma, right? And a lot of us don't know how to like deal with that kind of stuff. We kind of just we kind of just like suppress a lot of that stuff, right? And so I was felt like I was tested from God to like I have to overcome a lot of these obstacles that I had in my life. And I think for me, it was just like, what can I do that I can infuse my running with? So it became more like a meditative thing. So I would go in the mountains and I would meditate and pray for hours and hours at a time. And then I told myself, man, like I wonder if this is what people do, like when they're going through a lot of things in life. I wonder if like they use like running and meditation as a outlet. And I told my wife, I said, sometimes I just go up there just to be in the mother nature and just to like reconnect to myself, because I think our higher self always needs that. And I think
Mm.
a lot of us don't realize how much of that can really affect us, what I mean, of all the amount of stress and everything else in life. So it was great to like infuse my gifts that I have with like energy healing and with running itself and fitness. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what you say, even my husband says that, he's also a personal trainer and he utilizes not running, but mountain biking and gravel rides. And he
Yeah.
said, this is my church. This is my synagogue. I don't need to go to a place to pray. When I connect with the mountains, when I connect with Mother Nature, I know I'm in my homeostasis. So you can
Oh
relate.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they say like Mother Nature can heal everything, if you allow it.
Yeah.
Like we literally just got back from like Mount Shasta, and people don't know about Mount Shasta. It's like this vortex of like energy, right? And so while we were up there, we were like, my wife's like, we gotta go to this river. We gotta go to Sacramento River. There's this special place that has healing waters, right? People go there to heal themselves. And so we got there, it was like 15 people, and people were filling up jugs. I mean, like 5-gallon jugs of just water, right? And I got to that stage, I was like, that's kind of weird, but you know what? Let's do it. So we started drinking the water, and I was like, wow, it was literally like I felt like I like rebaptized myself with my faith and everything else. And it was like a new connection that I've never felt before. You know what I mean? Because I think as a kid, when you grow up, you're put in these circumstances, and this is what you believe in, this is your faith, whatever it is, but you don't get to like really choose that in some sense. And so like I kind of re-chose that for myself when I was up there, and I was like, man, like up here is like completely different energy. When you allow yourself to be open to receive and don't kind of like create that resistance, everything just feels different. So yeah, definitely, like your husband's like on top of it. Like me and him could definitely like connect and talk about all that stuff all day long.
Wow. Where is that mountain? And why wasn't I invited? What
Yeah.
I guess we
I
just
might
have to
get
go
into
up
running
the
if it involves that.
with the healing
Uh,
water? I can be baptized.
oh my gosh.
Baptized.
It's so funny because it's like right on the end spectrum of like Oregon and Northern California. So like you're 60 miles apart from each other, but it's like it's unreal. Like you go SoCal, we live out here, right? So it's like traffic, 405, all that craziness. And then you go up there and it's like mountains and trees. And you're like, wow, like no wonder people like get away from the city just to be up here. There's something about it, you know what I mean? I guess we
Amazing.
just have to have like a retreat up there. Just get a bunch of us to
Yeah.
go there, climb the mountain.
Well, and as far as the water, I mean, when we did a whole episode on hydration, but like it makes so much sense that that water did have a special energy. I'm sure,
Oh yeah.
like it would, yeah, straight from the earth, and yeah.
Oh, I love it. I mean, like people get grossed out by it, but literally, like it's like the best
Oh,
water I've ever tasted in my life. I literally
oh, yeah.
brought my friend like 6 gallons. I was like filling up bottles and bottles for him, and I was like, bro, this is like the best water I've ever had in my life, and it literally feels like your like vibration goes from like this to like this, and you're just like, wow, like it's so mind blowing to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I live in Ohio, and we just found a local spring like an hour from us, and I was so excited. And yeah, it was the same. It's the energy. You can feel it. You can taste it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good
It's
stuff,
for
right?
real. Yeah, yeah. And with what you were saying, like with the trauma, and we don't really know how to deal with our trauma. It makes so much sense. Like the running is like physical movement, like energy needs to move, right? Like and
Oh
move
yeah.
out of you. So yeah, to have running, I mean, talk about physical, but yeah,
It's so weird because like Louise Hay, she's always talked about these affirmations that you say, but then she also talks about like carrying energy in certain parts of your body, and then like not realizing that like you have this problem. Like I have something going on right now with my shoulder and my back, And then I'm like looking at the spiritual meaning behind that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this makes plenty of sense of why we store this energy. You know what I mean? And as each day, as I go through it and release it, it's starting to go away on its own. But you have to look at it from another context of it's not just the physical thing. Like we store energy everywhere. And I think when you take care of yourself in that way of like me drinking the better water, it helps, it kind of gives the energy in your body, like it gives it another sensation. And it like literally, I feel like as I drink it every day, it like I'm releasing more and more, you know what I mean? Like my body's craving it more and more often. So yeah, it is kind of weird how we store our energy, and movement's key. I've learned that over the
Mhm.
years. Like days that you don't want to move, you have to move, because if you don't move, then you know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with days off. Don't get me wrong, but I think like when you physically feel like you have to move, your body's craving that, you should move. At least go for a walk, go for a jog, go for a bike ride, whatever it may be. Go for a hike. I've been telling my wife that like you have to like always move, because if you don't, then your mindset changes, everything changes, and then you're kind of like on this up and down, which that's just life in general. But like when you give yourself those time to like really move, like you really start to channel more things within yourself, and then you start to realize, wow, like I'm in a much better state of mind than I thought I was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Beyond the hormones that gets to release, beyond the cortisol that gets to be lower, the adrenals, the serotonin that you get. Yeah, movement is key to release some of our trapped energy. And you talked about running, and I remembered reading a book, Born to Run.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if you read. So I was
It's a
given this book. It's a great book, and it made me want to run. But my question is, so I am Middle Eastern Hispanic,
yeah,
and I have junk in my trunk. I am not, you know, literally like running is a bit uncomfortable for me, I gotta admit.
yeah.
My body is just more
Agree.
curvy than whatever, than my peers maybe. So how, like, what would you suggest someone who does kind of like I'll do short runs in Orange
Yeah,
Theory or Barry's Boot Camp, but
yeah.
I don't see myself tackling like a long runs like you would do, like 100K or stuff like that. So what would be some of your suggestions?
So like in general, like I've always told like new runners that I train, you have to be smart about what you're doing, because a lot of us get so like ego when it comes to running, right? So it's like I could just run 3 miles, right? But like if you haven't done that in a long time, or you haven't done that ever, you can't just like go from 0 to 100. You know what I mean? So like I always tell people, do you know what? Go out for like 15 to 30 minutes, whatever it may be, and do like a run walk method. Like run for like 30 seconds, walk for like 2 minutes, right? So you slowly just kind of build that energy within yourself, because it can be very daunting as a new runner of like, okay, I just got to run 30 minutes. And then sometimes people are just like constantly like, oh, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. But when you kind of give yourself that break time to like, okay, I can run for 30 seconds. That's not that far. It's from this stoplight to this stoplight. Then you start to like walk a little bit. You kind of get this high, and then you get this low, high and low. So your body always constantly changes, but you also start to feel like, oh, I got more energy. I'm not burning myself out. So a lot of the new runners I have, I'm like, okay, hey, like you're in your building phase now. You're starting to start off with running again. Why don't you just start off slow, go for like 20 minutes, just do this like 10 times, one minute here, 1 minute there, or whatever it may be, whatever you feel comfortable with, and then kind of go from there. But a lot of us just get so ego about it, like, no, I got to push through like 2 miles, and then all of a sudden you're injured, and then all of a sudden other other things start happening, and then your knees hurt, and then your joints hurt, and then everything else is kind of like we're all interconnected, right? So like if you're constantly there's like a self-negative talk to that, right? But then if you're just not allowing yourself to like experience what you're supposed to experience, it's just not going to work out for you. So you literally have to make sure, okay, I need to go to the gym at least a couple days a week. Because now when I go to the gym, it used to be for like, I got to lift heavy crap and then show everyone that I got muscles, I got this and that, right? Now it's more like, let me just go and maintain myself. Like, I don't need to like lift ego lift. You know what I mean? There's days where I need to do that, but there's days for the most part where I just go and I'm like, okay, I got a little bit of a hip issue. Let me strengthen more of my hip muscles today. And then that will be good for the weekend long run. Right. And then I think just looking at it from that standpoint, and not overwhelming yourself. That's the biggest thing, is we always overwhelm ourselves of like, we have to run 3 days a week. The more running you do, the better it is long term. But if you go balls to the wall, you're not going to get where you need to be at. You know what I mean? And so I've learned over the years, when you kind of take yourself out of that context, it becomes much better. You know what I mean? When with your lifestyle, because now you're not putting so much stress. You already have emotional stress and other physical stress in your life. Like, why add another stress about running when running for me? I mean, it's more of a hobby. I challenge myself, but it's not like my career goal where I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do to survive. Now I just need to just run because it helps me reconnect myself in different aspect, right? So like for you, if you're hurting, you just have to maybe look at it from a standpoint of, okay, maybe I can just do a walk run method first. Let me just do it for 30 minutes. And then every few weeks, just kind of go up a little bit, maybe like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And then when you feel more comfortable, you'll be like, okay, I can run 3 miles straight or 2 miles straight. Let me just try to do that. And then make sure I bring water, make sure I bring some food if I need to, because your body's always expending more energy. So you may get a little more hungry. And so I've learned that you have to like make sure you're kind of prepared for that. Because if you're not, then you know what I mean, you're going to be like me and you're going to call your wife and be like, hey, can you pick me up at mile 8? You know what I mean? And she gets annoyed. So I've had to challenge myself on that aspect of like loving yourself when it comes to running and not overdoing it, because we all do it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good lesson in listening to your body too.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Understanding
Oh yeah.
what it's trying to tell you. Yeah.
I think that's in general, you know what I mean? I think a lot of us, we push through the pain. And I think there's a part of it where you should push through the pain, because it could just be like a mental thing of like a mental barrier. But then if it's like physical where it's like hurting you, then you have to learn how to like, okay, back up, stop. You know, there's plenty of races where I DNF'd, where I got to a stage where I'm like, I'm pushing through the pain, but it's not the good pain. It's like, I'm going to hurt myself pain, you know? And I think when you kind of allow yourself to like say it's okay, then everything ends up being fine after that, you know? So there's a point where to push and where not to push.
Wasn't there a story recently about a 75-year-old that took the gold medal in some race? Did you see that?
No, well, there's a lot of that out there. So there's a lot of people for some reason that are like cheating during these marathons or these like ultras. I just read something about a girl that she got in a car during like a race and then end up at some point, and then she took the third place trophy or something. But then it was like the whole thing about it. My friend sent it to me and I said, that's interesting. Like I would feel really weird to like cheat like that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, but I think that 75 like earned it fair and square from her age group, because how many 75-year-old do you see running? And she took the gold medal amongst her, I don't know, what was it, 50 to 70 or 60 to 80? I don't know, but she,
yeah. Oh my
very
gosh.
inspiring.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, you know, there's this one guy. His name is like Gene. He's like literally in his 70s, and he's running like a 250 marathon. He's running like 200-mile races, and inspires me to get after it every day, regardless of whatever I do. You know what I mean? Like literally these last 2 weeks, I've been like a robot. I've been like turning like left and right like this, not like how I normally would. And then as I started to clear the energy and everything like that, I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking about this guy today, and I'm like, man, this guy's running like a low 6 pace, you know, for this marathon, whatever it is. And I'm like, man, this guy's like 70 something years old and he's cooking and he's doing 200-mile races. Like, what's my excuse? You know what I mean? Like, we all come up with excuses, but I'm like, look at this guy. I'm like, okay, this guy's like 50 years older than me, and he's just like killing it. Like, what can I do to like better myself? Right. So it is inspiring for sure.
In such an expansive mindset too, because I think just, you know, we have such a idea of like what a 75-year-old is capable, or what, you know, what you should be able to do at 90. And when you see people who are pushing those boundaries, it just shows us. Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's like the way you view yourself too. Like if you see yourself being young, and you're definitely going to feel like that, right? I think a lot of us at some age, when it's like you turn 60 or 70 or whatever it is, you just kind of like, some people like feel like they're just going to decline because like, I'm going to die soon, or I'm old now, I don't need to do this stuff.
And you will, because
of
you have that mindset. Yeah.
So I always tell myself, I'm like, man, like a lot of people I train at the gym, they're like in their 70s and 80s. Like, you know what I mean? Even like, I would say like maybe my youngest is like 50, like 52, you know, but everyone else is
amazing.
Like still moving. Like I have like a cancer patient and he's like 65. I mean, things not looking well for him right now, but you know, I was training him. He's walking slow, but he's like, I gotta come here, I gotta move. And people are just like, man, like that's inspiring that like this guy has like, you know, terminal cancer, and he's like coming into the gym every day, and he's just trying to better himself regardless, you know what I mean, within himself. And I'm like, man, like this guy is going through hell and back, right? Doing all this like chemo radiation, and he's still showing up at the gym. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, man, like that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like he's just living his life like he normally would. And he goes on walks, he trains his horse, he hikes, you know, he works on cars. Like it's not like he's being a lazy butt, you know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, like that's rad. That's rad in my opinion.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think
awesome. Yeah.
it's always going to be me versus me, or me versus the ego, however you want to put it. It's always the internal battle that is going to influence our exterior life and circumstances, right? What is going on in my head? Like I know that you recently did a 100K run,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was the longest that you did, but so tell us a little bit about what challenges, what
Mm.
internal challenges that you face in the middle of the race or when you're preparing
Yeah,
for it.
it was actually a 50 mile. Um, yeah, that it's so weird because that. So I always tell people the distance you could run 10 miles and still have the same feeling as running a 50 mile or 100 mile. You know, like my ultimate goal is to get 100 mile maybe next year. But like when I got to that stage, so like it rained, I'm gonna say it rained maybe like a day before or 2 days before. So like this race was in Santa Monica Mountains, and so you know, we get the pre-anxiety race vibes, you know, and a lot of us are just all looking around each other like, okay, you guys ready? You know, and we take off. I'm like making sure I don't overdo it because it's gonna be a long day. But I also had a thing in my head of like, okay, what can I do to stay on track and not get in my head? Because a lot of the times I get in my head. And the funny thing is I got in my head within the first like 7 miles. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like it was like feeling unprepared, even though like I've been preparing for 6 months. And so I got to like mile 7, and thank God the trail was such a beautiful day actually. And so the trail wasn't as bad. And then we get to this one section like at mile 8 to 9, and it's like literally 2 feet of mud. Like you're running through mud, and I'm using every part of my body to stay like to stay upright. And I'm like sinking down, everything hurts. And I catch up with these guys because I started to feel a little panicky. I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. I catch up to these like 3 or 4 guys, and then we all just hang out and talk together. And so we kind of ran together for like well, those next, I would say maybe 13 to 20 miles. And those guys like saved my life. You know what I mean? Because I was in like the pain cave so early on, and I said, man, what am I feeling this way? And I realized that I was uncomfortable being in a situation that like I trained all over that course the whole time for those 6 months, and I pushed myself mentally and physically. And when I was uncomfortable and like life threw a curveball at me, I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Right? I gave up, like literally mentally gave up. And then I said, no, no, no. Just took a deep breath in during that time frame, right? And then when we got to this one part, we saw all of Camarillo, and we all stayed out there. We're all like, wow, like what a beautiful day this is. You know, we're so blessed to be able to run this. And so we were running down, and then it got hot, and I was like, dude, this never gets this warm in December. And it got really warm, and I met up with this guy. His name was Lofton, and he was a nurse, and we were talking. And then I was like, dude, my hip flexor's so tight. Oh, this really sucks, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, dude, I know, like, this is really crappy right now. And so he takes off a little bit. We get to the aid station. We're sitting down talking, trying to eat. So I take my time at this aid station because I need to fuel, because I spoke to you already, no, but I like
Mhm.
I have a hard time with hydration and nutrition, because last year I did this. I like, almost died of dehydration. And so I took care of myself this time around. And then I start climbing up the biggest climb, and my legs are like just not even moving. They're like locked up. And I said, oh my gosh, like it's 5 miles to the next aid station this way or 5 miles that way. And I was like, what do I do? And I'm taking a deep breath. I've been on this course a lot, and I have my hiking poles. And I said, you know what? We just have to get to the turnaround point. And so eventually I get there. My buddy's been hanging out there. He's supposed to pace me. He's been hanging out there for like 2 hours waiting for me, because my end goal is supposed to be like 8 hours total for the race. And so he was waiting there early on for me. And then I got there in like, I think I got there in like 6 hours and some change, maybe close to 7 hours. And I was like, bro, I'm so sorry. Like, I thought I was gonna be here faster, but for some reason everything's taking a lot longer. And then I turn around, I get some La Croix or something, and I start drinking up, and I'm trying to run and I can't run. And he's trying to like get me to go, and I'm like, dude, everything hurts. My flexors are done, my quads are done, everything's locking up. I think he gave me something called Hot Shot, and it's like this anti like cramping thing, and it tasted like crap. And so it gave me heartburn. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so much going on right now. And I'm trying to think, okay, the next aid station is not 12 miles. And like, this is a long stretch. And so I get to that aid station, thank God. And Chris is just like, here, gives me all the stuff. And then we had the last, like, I think I would say like almost 7 miles to the neck to the bottom of the finish line. And literally that day was like, I PR'd my 50-mile time from before, which is great. But it literally like God was testing me in so many different ways, from physical to like mental. It was a mental push for me that day. And when we talk about like mindset training, like everything went out the window for me. I didn't even like all the stuff I told myself that I should be doing and telling clients, I didn't even do it myself. It took me to like feel that way to realize, man, like I am so negative on myself when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to these races.
Mhm.
It literally triggered other things in me where I was like, man, okay, I need to work on myself a little bit more. Like I feel like there was more trauma coming out that I just kind of housed and suppressed for so long that I was like, okay, I'm good. You know what I mean? But like I would tell myself that, but I wouldn't like repeat it. Like I wouldn't give myself that love I needed, right? It was just like, okay, that was it. You know what I mean? Like now when I feel something, or I feel like if I feel nervous, right, I start praying. Like I'm old school Catholic in the sense where like I use a rosary prayer, and then I use other things, right? So I was meshing every spiritual thing I've learned over the course of my whole life together. And now when I feel that way, I start to like change that mindset of like, no, bro, okay, like God's with me, you know, Jesus with me, like whoever's with me, my angels, whatever. It like makes me feel better. I feel like I'm like realigned, rebalanced, you know what I mean? But like I said, that race definitely challenged me to a state where I'm like, okay, now I know what it feels like to suffer. Now I know what it feels like to have physical pain. And now I know what to tell my clients. I have a guy who's running a 50 mile in 2 weeks, and he's running on I think 100 mile, maybe 4 months in September, 5 months. And so I told him like, this is the game plan for you, and this is what you have to work on. This is what I dealt with, and I don't want you to deal with this anymore. Like you have to like really get to this stage, you know what I mean? And he's always moving, he's always working out. He has a race every other weekend, it seems like, you know what I mean? So he's physically pushing himself, and I think now he's at the state where he wants to challenge himself mentally, you know what I mean? So the next stage after this race, we're definitely going to work on that mental aspect of making sure he feels good, because you could run 50 miles and be completely fine, but then you get to a state where it's like nighttime and it's like everything around you is dark, and you're like, okay, like it's just me and the forest, and that's it, you know what I mean? Maybe Bigfoot, I don't know. But
Yeah.
like
Or mountain lions, I was about to say.
yeah, you know, so it is, yeah, that 50-mile race, you know, it literally even taught me to be like, I don't think I'm ready for 100 mile yet, you know what I mean? Because sometimes we have to put ourselves in a position where we're like, am I ready for that, or am I not? Do I want to overwhelm myself, you know, with that or not? Because, you know, it's like me thinking about from Camarillo to like LAX is pretty much what I ran in that race, you know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, like I ran to LAX, like I think about that stuff, and I'm like, man, if I run 100 miles, I'm like in Carlsbad, you know what I mean? I'm like in this position, and I'm like, maybe I'm not ready for that mentally, you know, maybe I got more work to do first before I even try to tackle something like that. Because like 54 miles is like the longest I've run, and getting to 100K, for some reason, 100K distance for me, it's like the hardest thing to like tackle. Like I attempted it twice, and I didn't want to put myself in a position now to like, I told my coach, I'm like, yo, Keith, like I want to do this next year, and maybe next year might be the year. And so now this year is all focused on building myself inside and out, you know, focus more on the inner work, and then the outer work will kind of translate to that.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow.
Mhm. I know it's a lot to
Yeah. Well, I have a cousin that runs, and I hear she's done a 50-mile race, and I'm just like, why would you do that? However, you going through that whole story, I'm like, okay, like let's look at all of the things that how that like you had people who were there who gave you energy and like showed you that sense of community, which like it's like check, that's so important. And then, you know, like being able to kind of get yourself physically, emotionally, mentally to this place where you were just like done, and knowing that like at those places in your life and in that race that like, hey, we need to call on a higher power here. Like, let's like, it's just, and then, you know, you also having that awareness of like, okay, like that was such a good lesson for me. I'm not quite ready for the next, but that doesn't mean that I won't like, but let's stay here and let's work on this on the inside. So I just you going through that whole thing, I was like, okay, I get why, you know, there's this passion and drive towards doing things like that, because I see that you can learn, there's so many lessons there and so much that you really have to dig deep for.
Oh yeah. And I think that's like, you know, when I started my podcast, Dig Deep, it was more than just like running, you know, like I wanted to bring more awareness about myself to other people, like be more vulnerable in front of people. Cause I think everyone sees me as like this ultra happy dude, which, you know, a good amount of the time I am. I mean, we all go through lows in life, right? And so like literally I had to dig deep within myself to overcome those challenges mentally and physically, you know, and you know, it wasn't the time I was hoping for, but it's the day I needed to like really understand where I was at within myself and within my faith and within my mental state as well. So like I called in everything around me. I was like praying to everyone, being like, come down and give me some good energy, you know. And I think that's what's so great about the community is, you know, I don't run a lot of roads races in general. Like I run a few here and there, but I'm mostly on the trail, right? And so the road community is completely different than the trail community, in my opinion, right? Like the trail community, especially in the ultra scene, everyone's just like everyone's like your family. Like everyone feeds you. They like give you whatever you need. Like if you need a foot rub, literally they'll like get down and like rub your feet. Like whatever it is, like they're always there to support you. Even like when my wife comes out with me and she's there forever, they're literally like, hey, you eat, like you're crewing him, like go take some of the food on this table, like drink this, drink that. And she came up to me one day after one of my races and she's like, I actually like it that this community itself is like, they're very like family. Like it's like they tell you, do you know what, girl? Like you've been running around all day, like you eat, you do this, like it doesn't matter if he's out there, like he could take care of himself. You take care of yourself. And it's true. Like when you have people around you that are helping you crew, they have to feel physically fit and they have to feel physically like in a good place, because if they're crewing you, like they're driving to the aid stations or they're like hiking to those aid stations. It's not like in roads, like you could just run on a sidewalk and be there in a second. Like trails, like you could be like 10 miles deep and you may need someone to like pick you up. And I think the community itself, like those four guys I ran with, definitely, you know, they picked me up to a new level where I was like, man, like one of them was from like Ventura, one of them was from like another state, another one was from LA, and we all came together as one big happy family. And I definitely love that vibe that we have when it comes to like the community itself. You know, I think runners understand each other, but I think also location, like I was pacing one of my clients and friends in San Francisco, right? And out here in SoCal, you can run and you can be like, "Hey, what's up?" Like you can give everyone like a high five, or you can be like, "Good morning," right? In San Francisco, it's not like that at all. Everyone's so like they have their little headphones in, and they're just like it's like people in New York East Coast are just like straight, you know what I mean? And so I was running by these people while we were kind of doing a shakeout run a couple days before, and Scott's running next to me, and I'm all like looking around, and I see all these people back and forth. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" Everyone just looks at me like dead face, and I was like, "Scott," like, and Scott's laughing. He's like, "No one says hi to you. Like everyone's here just like that." And I have a smile on my face. I'm like feeling good. We're next to the beach, and then this older lady runs by me, and I'm like, "Good morning," and she was like, like she wasn't used to that, right? So I startled her, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "I'm so sorry," you know. Japanese lady, right? And then I run by this guy and he's looking at me and I'm just like, he looks down at me and I'm like, "Hey man, like have a good run." And he does this. puts his head down, and it runs that way. And so I was like, man, like it's weird that each community is different, like different parts of where you live at. Some people just, San Francisco is always on the go, you know what I mean? Like you get a cup of coffee, you go to work, and then you live this nightlife, whatever. Here in California, everyone's like, or SoCal, it's all laid back. So everyone's just kind of like, hey, what's up, bro? What's going on, man? I'm going surfing after this run, whatever it is. And so like it's like, I think different parts of the world and different parts of the United States, they have every city, like depending on how big it is, they're either like super into like what it is, or they're kind of just like, I gotta do my own thing, And I think San Francisco was a place where I was like, I don't know if I could live up here because of that, because I like smiling and I like waving to people and I like saying hi because it brings another connection. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, what are you training for? What are you doing this? What are you doing that? Can I help you? Can I not help you? You know what I mean? So yeah, it's interesting, like I'm a SoCal kid for sure now that I travel to certain places. I'm like, man, this community down here in SoCal is like completely different than like Northern California, and even going to like Washington or Oregon, everyone's like super friendly, super cool, like super hippie. You know what I mean? I guess it just depends on where you're at and what state. You know what I mean? But it is funny. It is funny just like thinking about that.
It's so interesting that the camaraderie changes according to where you're at, because that was one of our questions to you. How is the camaraderie here? But I guess you're right. It changes according to where you're at.
Which is so weird, because runners itself, like maybe it's just San Francisco, I don't know, or maybe maybe it could be other places, but it's weird to me when like even at the gym, when you see me, I'm always saying hi to you. When other people see me, they're like, oh, what's up, Brand? What's going on? I like know everyone's name. I know the routine. You know what I mean? Like we're all tight knit like that. And then when they're late, I'm like, hey, like you slept in, like it's like 2 hours past the time you're supposed to be here. You know what I mean? And they're just like, oh yeah, I had to sleep in. I had my kids. I had to do this and that. And even when I'm gone, like I was on vacation for like a week, more than a week, and everyone's like, I thought you quit. I thought you left. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just turned around. I was like, no, I'm okay. Like I just went on vacation. I had to get away for a little bit and recharge. But it is funny how like, yeah, the camaraderie is like, it's different. But like I got a race on Sunday, and I know like this is like an autism, it's like Autorun, it's for autism.
Oh yeah, I almost signed up to that. I have many friends who are going. Yeah, and it's with kids, the whole thing. Yeah.
And I think that vibe is going to be great. I think like having that and running for like, because I train someone who's autistic, and so I sympathize for what the parents have to go through, right? And so, the person I was training for a little bit, the mom's like, when he's with you, he can just like be whoever he wants to be, and I don't have to think about it. You do the work, I get to have my own time alone. And it teaches me to have more like appreciation and have gratitude towards what I have, you know what I mean? Because this person is processing things a lot differently than how I process. And I think just like I'm excited to run this race, because it's just a good race to run, but then also just to see the people there and see like that you're not limited to who you are. Like you can accomplish anything within whatever you believe in. There's a lot of autistic kids out there and other people that have disabilities that go out and have a good time and have a smile on their face, and they show up and they do what they got to do. And I really, it really is inspiring. I look at that, I'm like, man, like you should still sign up. It's still good. It's still open.
We wanted to wait, but wait, it's this weekend.
This Sunday. Yeah, this Sunday, if you want to.
It's the whole family, so it's a really special race. There's going to be face paint and activities for the kids.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to run the whole thing. There's special races for little kids. So
yeah, it's a good one. It's gonna be the first time I'm running it. I typically don't run a lot of road races, but all my friends were doing it, and I was like, no better way than like half the group in our run club is like doing it, So I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, well, they'll do it. I'll just do it. So I signed up last night, and then now my other friends are going to sign up. So now we're just going to have a good fun time and celebrate and maybe meet new people. I think that type of organization itself, I think that's when it brings in more of the community from Ventura County, because everyone's all for that stuff. Usually some people just go out there and just run it and then don't really like talk. They just kind of do their thing and then leave, right? They get the medal, get the t-shirt and leave. But I love being like at races, especially like volunteering, because you get to cheer people on. You get, now it's like the energy that you receive from stuff. Now you get to put it out there, and you know what I mean? And one of the races I volunteered like a month ago, I was up there by myself on the top of the ridge, and I was like screaming and cheering people on and giving people water or whatever it may be. And they were like, "Oh yeah, you such great energy. Thank you for cheering me on." Like, and I even would run with them, like a quarter mile, half a mile, and then run back to my spot and start doing the same thing, start cheering people on, because I think people need to know that they're loved and they can accomplish anything. You know what I mean? Especially when you're on a low and you're like, "Oh, I'm just ready to be done," and then they hear someone like clapping and be like, "No, you got this, brother." You like keep going, and they're like, "Okay, okay, okay." And then they finish the race, and then they're just like they're proud of themselves, because we need that. We need that uplifting spirit, not just from yourself, but like within people around you. 100%.
Yeah. To be able to witness that, like, gives you faith in the human spirit, and like, like, okay,
I mean,
at their core, people really do want
especially
the
after
best for you and cheer for you.
yeah, especially after like 2020, like, I've always told people like during 2020 was more of like a crap show to me. You know what I mean? Like people just like seclude themselves from everything, which I mean we had to, right? But then it was like also people's like mental illnesses just like drop. Like people are having a hard time with everything in life. And I was like, you need people to uplift you. And even till this day, like I try to like bring up people when they're feeling like still upset and sad about a lot of things. I was like, during 2020 should have been the year where it was like, for me, it was like a reset. I just reset. I charged myself, recharged myself. And I think a lot of people, when they stayed inside, they kind of lost themselves. They were kind of in this like rat race of being indoors only in four walls, because they felt like if they left, things were going to be negative and things were going to happen. But I told people, like, when you put the fear out there of like what you don't want to get, you're most likely will get it, right? And I think they were attracting what they didn't want more to them, opposed to like going outside and maybe just reconnecting by stepping on the grass barefoot and reconnecting to Mother Nature, right? And I think a lot of people just like lost themselves in that sense. And now that people are out and about and running and doing a lot of things, they feel more comfortable now, and they feel like this is what I needed, because they didn't have that for those 2 to 3 years of being stuck indoors. And I think now people are starting to realize, okay, it's this is what I definitely needed in a race. This is what I definitely needed in a community. I needed more people to uplift me instead of like not, you know what I mean? And during 2020, like all my friends and I, we just run together still, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't really working at the time because everyone didn't want to train or work out and the gym was closed. So I took that time for myself to like meditate, really focus on my inner work, and then just still have a good time with my friends. Like it was only like a tight knit of people that we ran with, but I needed that. I needed that energy. You know what I mean? Like we talked about COVID, but we also talked about other things in life. And a lot of my friends said, "Man, being stuck on four walls definitely taught me more about myself than anything." You know what I mean? It can go both ways. It could have been a good thing, or could have been a negative thing for a lot of people, And my wife said it was a hard year for her during the first year of that. And then she realized, like, I can't allow this type of energy to like, suppress me from living my life and carrying more fear and anxiety and depression, whatever we all went through, you know what I mean? Because we all go through a lot of that stuff. And I think when you find like a good community of people in general, and people that uplift you with meditation or with energy work, I think you can definitely see things from a different perspective of like, okay, maybe this is why this had to happen for me to like learn this. And just like my race, I went through everything that day in 11 hours to realize that I'm much bigger and better, and there's a bigger picture of everything, right? And so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just community is a big thing. And that's why I love my run club, and why I like the host thing is because I try to bring everyone together. Like Camarillo doesn't have much of a community when it comes to running. Like people kind of do their own thing, or they have friends that are like, hey, let's run together, But when you host something that like 15 people show up and everyone's having a good time, everyone's laughing, everyone's joking, like you understand like this is my purpose of like why I'm here right now at this moment. And I love it. And I love like hosting. I love just being around the community itself of energy healers, and also, runners and triathletes and cyclists. Like we all come from different backgrounds. So it's cool to like get different perspectives of like what they do to train, and like what they do for fun. And they have kids. I didn't know you were married. I didn't know you had kids. You know what I mean? Like it's cool to like meet people in different ways. And I think the running group itself brought in a lot of people from the military that are stationed here for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now kids, like I'm training, like I've been very fortunate to be able to train kids at younger ages to help them excel in their sports for the future. You know what I mean? So like my training has gone from, you know, typical, let's say 30s. Now it's like, oh, you could train kids. Yeah, I can do whatever you need. You know what I mean? Like I know what it feels like to work hard as a kid, especially growing up and being a soccer player. So I know what it takes for you to be this next big person that you want to be. And so now our business has opened up to like training anyone from like I think like 9 years old to like 80, 85. You know what I mean? People just want to move.
Amazing.
Yeah.
People just want to get going, you know? It's like
Yeah.
why be sad in life, you know? Like let's create more happiness and within yourself. And it makes me happy. Like I smile like I'm on this podcast right now and I'm probably like smiling like the Joker. I'm just like, you know, ear to ear smiling, right? And it's like but like talking about this stuff and being part of something makes you feel so good inside. You know what I mean? Like even before this podcast, I was so nervous. I was like, I'm on someone's podcast. I don't want to like stutter. I don't want to do this and that. I don't want to cough. Like now it's like when I realign myself and I took a deep breath in before I joined, I was like, okay, I'm good. Like we're good. I'm talking. I could be a chatterbox. You know what I mean? I can do whatever I do best.
Just be you. Just be you. You are a vessel for the light. You are a shining
Yeah.
star. Just bring your soul into it, and there you go.
Yeah, I know. And it took me a while. It took me a while to figure that out. And I'm still trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? But it's better today than it was yesterday. And that's how I got to look at life in general and life with running and life of being a husband and stuff like that. You have to take steps at a time. You can't just, like I said earlier, you can't go from 0 to 100 and expect things. Now it's just like one small step equals one bigger step in the future, you know? And I think that's where I'm at now. So I'm so excited, you know.
Is that if you could say to your younger self one thing, what would that be?
That's hard because like there's a lot of things I would tell myself, but I think for me, I would say take more risk. I didn't take enough risk I was so fearful a lot. I mean, like I went through so much trauma as a kid and just going to therapy and talking about that, you know, and I think I didn't take enough chances on myself within what I wanted to accomplish. It was doing what my mom wanted me to do or doing what people told me to do instead of like really sitting there and be like, if I want to become this runner of a person, like I need to take more risks at that, right? And I think a lot of myself was even to this day, I tell myself that and I have to follow up with it because I don't take enough risks on myself when it comes to running or in life. I kind of hold myself down a little bit with that kind of stuff. And I think if I allow myself to like have this purpose, bigger picture, and allow myself to be there and actually not create resistance, then I think I know for sure I'll get there. It's just allowing myself to do it. You know, like I think that's the biggest thing with everyone is not being able to give themselves permission to show their limitless potential of whatever it is. We have so much potential in life, and I think a lot of us hold ourselves down for it. You know what I mean? And even though people don't like to admit that, there is a component where we do. You know what I mean? Like you get to a state and you're just like at a plateau, and you're like, "What do I do?" You know what I mean? Like if I go from here, you know, and I want to get here, but I'm still staying here. Like, what are the steps for me to get there? And I think a lot of us don't think about that. They're like, I'm already comfortable. I'm comfortable where I'm at. Let me just stick here. Like, my life is good. I'm an accountant. I make good money, but it's sometimes not even about that. Sometimes it's just mentally getting yourself out of a place where you don't feel like you're stuck. Because a lot of us during these last 3 years, a lot of people I talked to, they felt like they were stuck. You know what I mean? And I hate for myself to feel like I'm stuck in a position where I'm like not growing, you know, physically and mentally. I think we all have to like make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable to try to get to the next stage in our life. And I didn't do that enough as a kid. I kind of backed off a little bit, you know. I saw a wave in the beach and I was like, that's a big wave. I don't want to drown. And I almost drowned twice. Like I had like a near death experience like that same day twice. and then I stayed away from water. So it's kind of funny. I went from like a water baby now to like a mountain water kind of thing because of that experience. And so now when I go to water, I look at it, it still triggers stuff in me, what I have to heal. But I also realized that like it changed my point of view of life a little bit, but also changed my direction of where I was supposed to go. My direction was always like one path, and now it's I'm open to receive. So sometimes when I meditate and I see things, I always see a path left and right, and it's okay. If I go right, it's always going to be the same thing. If I go left, it's going to be something new. So why not take the chance to go left? So a lot of the time I try to go left as much as I can when it comes to that stuff. And even when I do energy healing, it's literally like the same stuff I go through is like the same stuff I do tell people when I'm doing the energy healing, and they process it and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. You know what I mean? But there's so much I can do as an energy healer that will help you, but you have to make the choice to like want to better yourself. You know what I mean? Like, and I've been taking more chances now in that realm of spiritual healing and using my gifts to help people, but also using my gifts to also change within myself. That's the hardest part.
Beautiful.
Right. I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but like change is scary. Change has always been scary.
Yeah. But there's so much you can learn from the resistance to the change and the uncomfortable places. And like you were saying, that's where growth happens.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because I think about that all the time. Like there's a guy that I follow, David Goggins, which a lot of people probably know. But like he put himself in a position where he had to be uncomfortable just to get to the next stage. And even when he feels like he's slacking, he puts himself back in that position again. So he knows what to do. And I think a lot of us don't, when we feel something, we don't change those habits, right? We just go, nope, we're okay. I'm done. You know what I mean? But I don't want to live my life like that anymore. Like I think we live in a beautiful world and there's a lot of beautiful people around us. So why would I not want to connect? Or why would I want to like stay in this position where I'm always going to be unhappy? You know what I mean? Like I felt like I've been unhappy a good amount of my life because of everything I've gone through. And I have this like pity party of like, I victimized myself too much with a lot of situations. And I said, why would I put myself in a position like that, living life? You know what I mean? Like I can put a front and be happy and still feel the same way, or I can just be happy in general and get over what I'm feeling and work on myself and then experience life from a different perspective. You know what I mean? And that could be through my running, my coaching, my energy healing, me just having a conversation with you guys on the podcast. You know what I mean? Like people are going to hear this stuff and listen to it and know like, man, like this is some good stuff. And this is what I need to do to like better myself now. You know what I mean? And I think that's why when I started my whole podcast, it wasn't just to get likes and it wasn't just to build this audience. It was literally just to like talk about the things I've been through, and maybe at some point in your life, you may remember something I may have said and you're going to change something about yourself from that point on. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people that listen to my podcast now, my friends and stuff, they literally will text me and be like, that was a great podcast. Thank you. Like easy, like being vulnerable, like having an episode about talking about weakness and vulnerability. One of my friends said, thank you for opening up. Like, I didn't know that about you. And I didn't know that I always been the same way. Like, vulnerability shows weakness and it shows this and that. And I'm like, look, it does, like to you, it could. But now that you know that, now you're like, it's okay to open up. It's okay to be this whole nother person that you need to be. And I think that's a good sign to know like you're growing spiritually, is when you finally accept some of that stuff instead of resisting it. You know what I mean? It's like the Buddhists always believe in that, like let that flow in. You feel the resistance, but don't let it affect you. Just let it go in and out, flow in and out like a river. And you're like thinking like, that doesn't make sense. Like when I feel it, why would I want it? Like, why would I want to feel it and feel uncomfortable? But you have to feel it to know what it feels like. And then you just have to close your eyes, breathe for a second, and then it goes away. It literally goes away in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? So I know my inner self, my inner child, it's funny that when you asked me that question, I saw that question and I was like, man, like I could say a lot of crap, but I think taking more risks and chances for myself is like the number one thing I think that I should be doing more often. And now that you mentioned that to me, now I got to tell myself that, because I just said it on a podcast with you guys, and I'm like, okay, I better tell myself that now. Okay, take more chances.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I just would like for you to be vulnerable and so open and being a male, because, and we talk about like that. I think, especially in our society, the masculine is like very wounded in that sense, you know?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, we could have a whole nother podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, this is like round one,
right.
now.
We'll have to have you back on and we'll just talk. Yeah. Cause we've had an episode on that. Yeah.
I literally just had that conversation with my buddy, and I said, and he's my coach too. And I was like, Keith, we were talking about this. And he's like, man, like there's so much like stuff that males have that they don't talk about, or they don't want to talk about it because it makes them look weak. And I literally had this conversation with my wife, and I was like, look, like I'm going through this and this, and I feel like if I depend on you more with this, then it makes me feel weak and I don't feel like a man, because society, we're supposed to like not show weakness, you know what I mean? And it's hard to live in this nowadays. It's like social media has a huge aspect to that, right? But like you see someone that's manly, but they could be going through a lot of stuff, you know, but they have to show that they're more manly. So that's, I've always grown up to be like that. And so when I started breaking down and having all these panic attacks at some point in my life, my therapist started saying a lot of stuff. And then I said, man, this makes plenty of sense of why I'm feeling this way. And I realized it's okay to show who you are. Like, it's okay if you cry, it's okay if you, you know, feel this way. And so I've been more open about that. And I think a lot of the, like we said, like male suicide rate has gone up because of all these different mental illnesses that they've been like dealing with. And you think about that and you're like, man, like, why can't like a male just call a buddy and be like, hey, like, I'm feeling this way? But there's like the stigma behind it, because it's like, no, I'm stronger than that. Yeah, you are strong, but to a certain point, you're gonna need to talk to someone. You're gonna need to release that energy. And you know, even some of the clients I've had in the past with energy healing and stuff like that, some of it was males, and I was picking up a lot of energy, and I was giving them their advice on stuff, and you know, they took it a certain way and they worked on themselves, and then that was it. You know what I mean? But it is interesting, like that whole, this is like another episode.
Yeah, this is masculine energy, maybe with your husband Dave and Coach B.
Yeah, we just need to have like
that would be cool,
tripod.
Right? A panel.
It's important. It really is important. It's important to
talk
have
about
these.
it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I think
because
no, say Brooke, it's like, it's true, because every guy's gonna have their own perspective on what they believe is vulnerable. They're gonna have their perspective on life. And I mean, I'm gonna be 38 soon, and it may not seem like I've dealt with a lot, and maybe I haven't yet, you know what I mean, or whatever. But like, your husbands have seen things differently growing up, you know, whatever, the 70s, you know, the 80s, whatever it may be, right? And so when you look at from another standpoint of like that, you're like, you know, the boomers and all that stuff back then, they see life differently. And now the new generation, you know, they see life a little differently. And so it's kind of interesting to hear like one aspect of a person that I train that's like 80, and then another aspect of someone that I train that's a lot younger. And you're like, man, like, interesting. It does put more like, gets your head turning a little bit, you know, in a way where, like, like I didn't realize they saw that as that, you know. And so yeah, I know. Yeah, this is a whole nother podcast for sure.
Yeah. And for our listeners, the listeners can go back to our masculinity and femininity that Brooke and I did together, right? It's on there, one of the first episodes we did. So go back and listen to that.
Yeah. That's good. I'll even, it's funny because all day today I was like telling my friends, I'm gonna be on a podcast today. I was like so excited, and they were like, which podcast? What are you gonna do? I'm like, I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about spirituality and running and stuff like that. And I may get off topic, I may not, you know what I mean? Because I just could be a chatterbox. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know. Like, I looked at the questions, it's gonna be running based, but I'm glad that we kind of did a little bit of everything, you know, because you get to learn something new about me that you never even knew about. We talked to the gym here and there, and we talked about food and all that stuff when we first met each other, but it's cool to like finally meet your partner that's also here and learn her perspective on stuff. And now she's probably like man, this is what my friend goes through when she runs, or like this is what he dealt with, and I understand, like we all have the same energy. We're all like one
Right.
consciousness. So it's like it's cool to
Yeah.
like have that relationship. So
We
now
have
we're all,
so many gems to edit from everything you're saying, right, Brooke? I'm listening to
Yeah,
this. Like, we
yeah,
gotta
so
edit
many
some.
like little clips we
Yeah,
can.
right.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll have to tag you so you can share it
Yeah.
out
yeah,
too. 'Cause-
honestly, because whatever it is, like I'm definitely gonna post all about it. So tag me
Yeah.
and do everything.
yeah.
That's
Well,
perfect.
we like to go deep here.
Oh yeah, I know. I
We
guess
dig
now
in.
maybe we'll reverse it now. Maybe I'm gonna have you guys on my podcast next time, and then we could get deeper into some other stuff.
Sure.
That'd be
There you go.
cool. Yeah.
See, then we're gonna flip it now. Now I'm
Yeah.
gonna be the guy asking you 1,000 questions.
We'll be
Love
ready.
it.
Yeah, we'll do that for sure.
Anything else, Brooke?
No, this was great. I mean, you get like you said, like there's so many lessons here and like so many, ways
Yeah.
we can see
Yeah.
of growth and community and
So we want to
Yeah.
thank you, Coach B. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Brandon,
Thank
for
you,
being
guys.
with us here
No,
on
I
Raising the
appreciate
New
it.
Earth.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, tune in because we may do a part B, part two to this
Mhm.
conversation, expanding
Yeah.
on masculinity and femininity. All
Awesome.
right. So
Thank you, guys.
bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.